Wow, look at all the people coming in. This is wonderful. Well, we admit people, if you want to just put where you're coming from in the chat, that would be wonderful. Love to see. We have readers today that are coming from as far away as Barcelona and as close as the next town over from me in Belfast, Maine. So, but it's great to see everyone here and welcome to the Poets Corner. And we have a lot of readers today. So it's great to see everyone. And I'm going to get started. I'm Meg Weston. I'm the founder, director, and host of the Poets Corner. And for any of you who might be new, a lot of you are names I've seen before and recognized as part of our community for a long time, but we started 5 years ago. This is our 5th anniversary of the founding of the Poets Corner. And 5 years ago, I never imagined it would be what it is today. It has over 8,000 people in our community from all around the world. And we've been doing this free Sunday reading series for more than 5 years, hosting emerging writers, as well as more well-known poets such as Jane Hirshfield, Ellen Bass, Billy Collins, Arthur Z this year, Mark Doty, Diane Seuss, many others. And you find all of the past recordings are on our website, poetscorner.org. Lucas Adair is our incredibly competent technical host who's been with me since the beginning. And if you have questions or problems, you can text him as host. And this year I was also joined by the very talented Liz Collick as our strategy and design director. So this is our 5th year also of our annual Ekphrastic Poetry Challenge that we do in partnership with Page Gallery here in Camden, Maine. They curate an exhibition of artwork that includes paintings and photographs and collage and sometimes sculpture, all kinds of art that is both hosted online on their website as well as in their gallery. And people submit poems. And this year we had an overwhelming response that a new record, over 200 poems were submitted. So I want to thank Colin Page and Kirsten Serby for their partnership in this event. It's one of my favorite events of the year. So 2 groups of selections are made each year, one by the poets and one by the artists. And of course, it's hard to choose among so many wonderful responses to very intriguing artwork. And I want to extend special thanks to those readers who joined me in making the selection, Austin Rodenbiker and Melissa McKinstry. They thoughtfully read through every one of the submissions and helped to select the poems you'll hear today. And if you're in the Camden area, the artist selection will be read in the gallery on Saturday, November 15th at 1 o'clock. Please come if you're around. I don't believe it'll be recorded. It hasn't been in past years, but it's just wonderful to be in the gallery and surrounded by the art in its full presence and hear the poems, which are not always read by the poet because the poet doesn't always live in this area. So it's either read by the poet if they're around or by a designee. And this year, we're also producing a book based on the 5 years of this collaboration. Won't include all the poems and all the art, but a selection. and it's called Conversations, 5 Years of Art and Ekphrastic Poetry. And we'll tell you more about that soon. One other thing I want to tell you about, or two other things. One is on December 7th, we have the return of our most popular event of the year, Reading Rilke Today. It's hosted by the poet, Rilke scholar, and translator, Mark S. Burroughs, who happens to live here in Camden, Maine. And Mark will be joined once again by the Irish poet and peace activist, Padraig Ó Tuama, who hosts the popular podcast Poetry Unbound, as well as for the first time this year, Kayleen Osbo, who's a composer, teacher, poet, and the founder of Mythica, which is an online educational company that weaves together music, art, poetry, and spirituality. It will be a wonderful conversation about Rilke's poetry and the ways it's relevant in our lives today. So I hope you will join us on Sunday, December 7th for that. I also want to tell you about the Camden Festival of Poetry. In 2026, it will happen again in May, the 12th through the 16th. It will feature as a keynote the poet and essayist Amy Nizuku Matato. And this year, for the first time, we're offering a festival residency. You can apply for this honor. You will get a month-long retreat at the Malay House in Rockland for the month of May, have the opportunity to present a workshop during the festival, attend the festival events, and it comes with a $500 travel stipend. It's open to poets outside of the state of Maine who want to come to Maine for the residency. So I encourage you to apply if you're interested. Applications close November 30th. The details can be found on the Poets Corner website or the Camden Festival of Poetry.org. So let's move on to the pleasures of today's event. I'm going to start by reading an ekphrastic poem that was featured in this week's column by A.O. Scott in the New York Times. It's based on an image that we're all familiar with, Monet's water lilies. And if you don't know Scott's poetry column, it's definitely worth looking up in the Times. So this poem is Monet's Water Lilies by Robert Hayden. Today, as the news from Selma and Saigon poisons the air like fallout, I come again to see the serene, great picture that I love. Here, space and time exist in light. The eye, like the eye of faith, believes the seen, the known, dissolve in iridescence, become elusive flesh of light that was not, was, forever is. O light beheld as though through refracting tears, here is the aura of that world. Each of us has lost. I'm sorry. Here is the shadow of its joy. I apologize for that interruption. I don't know why my phone was not on silent. But Scott, A.O. Scott in his column doesn't talk about ekphrastic. But this poem by Robert Hayden, written in the 70s, is just a wonderful example. It reflects on the art, and this is a painting that we all know, Monet's Water Lilies, but it goes beyond it. It shares thoughts about the poet's exterior and interior worlds. And although it speaks of issues of its time, Selma and Saigon, it feels completely relevant today. We can substitute any of the issues of our time there. And it shifts our seeing, it adds perspective, and it speaks about the power of art to do that for us. So the poets we're about to hear today deepen our relationship to the art that we're seeing. The poems add elements of time, story, and perspective that work in a conversation between poetry and art. We're going to start with two fifth-grade students from Camden-Rockport Middle School. The students and their teachers made a visit to the gallery, learned about ekphrastic poetry, and wrote 10-line poems in response. So first up is Eleanor, and her poem was written in response to Holden Willard's painting, Red Rock Lake. So we're going to leave that painting up on the screen for just a moment, and then we'll spotlight Eleanor to read her poem. Eleanor.
Okay. It's called Silvery Mirror. As I look down at the bubbling stream, I think, is this all a dream? As the rustle of leaves is on the air, in the rocks is a little lair. As I walk through a red wood, the wind kicks back and blows back my hood. Stars and moon reflected in a silvery mirror. As I look into those depths, it is oh so clear. That's all I did.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eleanor, for that beautiful poem. And look at all these hearts and applause coming for you. So next up, we have Javier reading his poem that was written in response to Sal Taylor Kidd's photograph called Silver Glinting.
Quiet stillness, like oil on the water. The evening moon light reflects a feeling of peace. I see an ocean and an island looking like a big megalodon alone, surrounded by the sea.
You know, Javier, there was some noise in the background that made it a little hard to hear you. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind reading it again? Could you do that for us? It's such a beautiful poem, and you'd have to unmute yourself here. There you go. Okay, go ahead.
Quiet stillness, like oil on the water. The evening moon light reflects a feeling of peace. I see an ocean and an island looking like a big megalodon alone, surrounded by the sea.
Thank you. Thank you so much for reading. That was wonderful, Javier. I know a few people asked if we could put them up, but we don't have them in print to put up here. But so we're going to move along. And next up is Harriet Sandilands, who is joining us from Barcelona, Spain. And she's reading her poem, Accidental Prayer, which was written after Holden Willard's painting Heat Lightning. And this is the painting on the screen now. Harriet.
Thank you, Meg. Accidental prayer. E was the only person I knew who had a swimming pool, though actually it belonged to her grandmother. It was fringed all around with raspberry bushes. Sometimes we would sneak into the kitchen of her grandmother's bungalow, still dripping underneath our towels, to make toast, lathered with butter, chocolate spread, and sugar. We spent hours, days, whole summers in that pool, designing synchronized swimming routines, staying in the water until we were wrinkled like prunes. Once it thundered and lightninged, and we stayed in the water chanting, "Thunder, thunder, come on, thunder," as though invoking some awesome god. Confused, I would sometimes scribble out prayers to that same god, asking him or her to take care of me and E, and both our families. The pool was deep, not embellished by fancy tiles. There may have been a diving board. There may have been a small wooden shed for getting changed. The raspberry bushes, prickled and dense, spoke profusely all through the summer. Hard to believe, now that raspberries come in small plastic trays, just how much abundance we knew. I wonder, where were the adults as we swam and leapt through thunder and lightning? Were they away and somewhere else, like Louis MacNeice said about time? 4 years later, E's sister was killed in a car crash. A few years after that, her dad had a heart attack at the top of the house, where they had installed a home gym in the empty room. Long out of touch, I now see pictures of E online and suspect she's injecting Mounjaro. The skin around her once lovely plump thighs is loose, though at certain angles she looks strangely lithe. I remember her dark hair and her soft body thrashing out of the water in time with mine, her hand crammed full of raspberries, our secret slices of toast spread with butter, chocolate, and sugar. And I wonder, of everything that happened, what was the prayer? Is it possible to pray something by accident? When we chanted, "Thunder, thunder, come on, thunder," what terrible chaos did we secretly summon? Whose lightning was born from that heat?
What a wonderful poem, Harriet. Thank you so much. Wow, and all the way from Barcelona. So our next poet is Sonya Schneider, who is joining us from Seattle, Washington. And she's reading her poem Eclipse, which is written in response to Sal Taylor Kidd's photograph, Oliver watching the eclipse. Go ahead, Sonia.
Okay. Thank you. Eclipse. We don our special glasses and wait for the shrouding of the sun's bright face. We are the lucky ones living in the dark inner umbra. I come expecting obscuration. Still, I'm hit by surprise at the sudden darkness and the chill that climbs through my body. Across the yard, trees transmit light into hundreds of crescent moons. Even my shadow turns sharper. My son points to the cloudless sky, his arm covered in goosebumps. Heads tilted upward, we dwell briefly in totality.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sonya. And next up, we have Charlotte Holmes from Belfast, Maine. She's reading her poem, Tulips in Winter, which is written in response to Susan Lichtman's painting by the same name, Tulips in Winter. Go ahead, Charlotte.
Tulips in winter. You've come to the end of landscape. The nothing gleaned about desire from a coral sky, from snow blue as the long lost someone's eyes never could have been. What old hurt insists that you remember how the tulip's dark heart unfolds just before the flower falls apart? You look for meaning, arrangements of objects in space, cobalt and gold juxtaposed, the strange gray heart at the center that signifies leaf or shadow or the open wound the rest of the room coheres around. Thanks.
I'm just so impressed. Thank you, Charlotte, with this selection of poems tonight that we get to listen to. Our next poet is Sherry Abaldo, who joins us from Las Vegas, Nevada. And she's reading her poem, Late Arrival, which is also written after Sal Taylor Kidd's photograph, Silver Glinting. Go ahead, Sherry.
Thank you. Late arrival. Out here, there is an equilibrium. For every pleasure craft, a working vessel. For every summer house, the ghost of a fish house. In World War II, a Nazi submarine penetrated Frenchman's Bay, dropped 2 would-be spies off in new snow. Tonight, I'm tired. Like old times, I bring you bread and apples. Like old times, I am transfixed by the view out the plane window, form and void, bright and dark, 1,000 tasteable, touchable grays that glister like a Cocteau film, like the one where it ends up a love story, only the guy remains a beast. In the morning, all this moonglade will be blue.
Something tells me you've been to Maine to know that story about the submarines.
I was born and raised in Union, actually.
Okay.
Nearby, near you.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Our next poet is Sanna Jacobs, joining us from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And her poem is called This Still Life. It's after Susan Lichtman's painting, Open Drawer.
Thank you. This still life. If we were still friends, we'd all ease into these years together, just as they'd ease out of shoes in my doorway, arriving with foil-covered pie dish and armful of flowers, one asking breezily where I keep my vases, or perhaps she'd already know. And she'd trim stems on the diagonal under running water, while the other put my kettle up for tea, thought to heat the mugs. And unwrapping her plum tart I'd pull that handle, drawer yawning open like an old friend, a trove behind hardwood, clutter worth rooting through, and I'd fish it out, that tarnished pie cutter, a gift from my wedding, back when we were friends. And if we still were, we'd fold languidly into seats, trading compliments, admiring my new settee, one's bold patterned midi, the other's fresh cut bob. And we wouldn't have to rush. Kids, jobs, dogs, aging, mothers, recent divorces, streaming shows. No. We'd slow bloom like dahlias, our bare feet petting the sheepskin rug, each fiddling our own hair, elbows jutting toward one another, firewood crackling. If still friends, aging into translucence, our afternoon would unspool golden violet like winter turning spring.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sanna. Like winter turning spring. Oh, beautiful poem. So next on our list, we have Lisa Merschel. Lisa is coming from Hillsborough, North Carolina, and she's reading a poem called Baby Take the Train after Chris Van Dusen's drawing, which is from one of his, he's a children's book illustrator. If you're not familiar with his work, it's wonderful. His drawing is called Baby Lincoln and Stella Endicott. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. Baby, take the train. Fussy family members banned them from holding maps, from navigating on their own terms. So off they go. Two neighbors escape hand in hand on the lam. Turn around, little Stella. Unleash adult baby Lincoln. Head home. Your captain time will come. Listen, baby. Forget the past, the tasks, the anxious breakfasts, the unmade bed. Forget the lists, the what to do's and why's. Board that train and for goodness sake, read the comics, devour jelly beans, the sour ones, handfuls at a time. Over your scratchy sweater, slip on that silver sequin dress you stole from your sister's closet. Don all your loot from the Dollar Tree. The 13 miniature Christmas wreath hair clips, the LA Colors hydrating lipstick in Raging Berry. Cool yourself with the purple hand fan, Starburst edition. Apply the Better Than Sex volumizing mascara, pricier even than the high-density black wig. Flip the thick hair, blink once, notice the long lashes licking your field of view. Flutter your eyes and see the scene unfold like the early movies in rapid sequenced photographs. Notice, finally, no need for disguise. No one notices you. Notice that this is what travelers do. How people mill about minding their own business, tending to their interior gardens while you bloom in seat 3A. Even so, just for once, assume the Marilyn Monroe. Lift your chin, squint, pucker, blow a kiss, your outstretched fingers at right angles with your lips. When the train rumbles to life, leave baby behind. Reclaim your name, Lucille, hell, Lucy. Then pull off your dress, undecorate your wig, unwig your hair, smudge your lipstick on tissue, sing a song to yourself about a girl in the sky with diamonds, but don't budge that mascara. no sister. It will remind you every few seconds of a future in pictures. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. That was delightful, delightful. And so imaginative. So next up, we have Sarah Snyder from White River Junction, Vermont, reading her poem called Blue after Ingrid Ellison's painting, which is called Figure 4.
Thank you. Blue. I'm seeing a map, contoured and forward. I'm seeing worn paths on an island, wooded ones, canopied with oak and maple, anchored in the scent of spruce, pine, and cedar. I'm also thinking of your face, the pinkish sheen of your cheeks, especially when you smiled. I remember your hand outstretched, holding a pint of blueberries, how you hitchhiked from Castine to Southwest Harbor, where I was working. That day off, the sun glittered on the wrinkled sea. We rediscovered blue and knew the warmth of sand at Seal Harbor. You are an echo. I think of you when I hear the plaint of gulls. Nothing tattered in what we held. A sweet murmur left behind, something I've polished for decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Beautiful poem, beautiful painting. So wonderful. Next, we have Marianne Worthington coming to us from Williamsburg, Kentucky, reading her poem, which is called At the Corn Pile, My Brother-in-Law Leaves for the Wildlife. And this is written in response to Brigham James' painting called Deer in the Woods.
At the corn pile, my brother-in-law leaves for the wildlife. First light, the turkeys come. Maybe a dozen hens carve their way through the woods, flanked by a lone Tom who struts and makes a big deal of his tail feathers. Then the bands of deer who practice gender separation at feeding as strictly as any Southern Baptist Sunday school class. The morning is chopped by the cardinal's cries, the crows telling it loud in the trees. Woodpeckers hammer and watch for an open spot at the corn pile. And I watch it all from my sister's kitchen window while I wash up last night's supper dishes, my desires pooling in the tepid dishwater, greasy and gray, and no longer any count for scrubbing away these stains.
Thank you, Marianne. I love the details in this poem, and especially that title. It is just wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Wendy Drexler of Belmont, Massachusetts, reading And Isn't It Always There, which is also after another Brigham James painting called Cottage Book Marble Light.
Thank you. And isn't it always there, in memory or half remembered, Was it once or maybe dozens of times? A curtain drawn halfway back, a wood-paneled wall with a print of a low-slung sun, or maybe a moon like a ripe tomato. The water so white, the canoe is a gray ghost, and a table lamp, the generosity of its pleated shade, the hunter green base, the shape of an hourglass holding time at bay. In a motel room with my father, those inextinguishable Saturday nights I spent with him because his new wife didn't want me at their house. Oh, how special I felt, just the two of us, a frosted mug of root beer and a burger at the drive-in before we'd check into the Dune Crest Motel or the Thunderbird on East Colfax. I'd scoop matchbooks from a big glass bowl on the front desk, then search our room to see if anyone had left anything for me. Only a black Bible in the nightstand drawer. At bedtime, my father would swivel the cord to snap the green drapes shut, their thick folds almost too heavy for the rod to carry. But now my father is telling me a story. It's the one about a stepdaughter who is to become a princess. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, for that wonderful poem. It's so interesting to read different poems written to the same work of art over time. And this was just such a delightful reimagination in response to this work, this artwork. So our next poet is Brittany Deininger, and she's from Bronxville, New York, and she's reading her poem Open Drawer, which is also written after Susan Lichtman's painting Open Drawer. So you'll get an opportunity to hear another take on this painting with Brittany's beautiful poem.
Open drawer. Into the drawer went all of it. Fork and knife, pack of batteries, loose like beetles. Shame's tangle of snapped rubber bands. What I didn't say over the phone in decades of blooming and broken branches. What I sing only to myself and the dog. 2 fruit flies carrying on in the kitchen, becoming legion. The book of silences. Cry of a girl, child in my dream with no name. What keeps opening the drawer a crack in the night, just enough to nick my hip, leave a mark.
Thank you, Brittany. Wow, just thank you to all of you for those wonderful poems we just heard. They were gorgeous. They were heartfelt and imaginative. And so I want to take a little bit of time to open it up. If anybody has questions for our poets, please put them in the chat and I will, I'll read them. And if they're to a specific poet, please say so. Otherwise, I'll just ask if any of our poets want to respond to that particular question. But I'm going to start by asking one that, you know, just about anybody could respond to. But what was it like looking through the art and making that choice of one that spoke to you enough to write about? Would you talk about that process for you? And if nobody volunteers, I'll call on somebody, so.
I'll say something.
Right.
When I opened the page and started looking at the poem, at the paintings, Susan's painting just grabbed me immediately. And although all of the artwork was interesting in its own way, I think it was the color in Susan's painting that I was just immersed in, and I knew I had to write about that one. So for me, there was no question about which one. I think the painting chose me.
That's great. Did any of you have a different experience in choosing a painting? Was it, or work of art? Was it hard?
I'll go, Meg. I spent quite a bit of time with all the pieces. They spoke to me in different ways. And the one with a curtain across,
Yes.
I really wanted to write a poem inspired by that piece, and it just didn't come. And finally, I love Sal's photographs, and I love photography. And what made me choose that piece eventually was I had a personal experience with the eclipse, and I have only daughters, and I was really intrigued about writing a poem in which I could say my son. So that's what really sealed the deal for me, and I had a lot of fun.
That's great. It just speaks to the imagination that you can imagine having a son from looking at a photograph, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. I noticed that Colin Page is on here, and I want to ask Colin if you would want to just say a few words about how you curate the exhibition.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. So curating the show is actually a lot of fun for us because we try to think about what people wrote about the previous years. And I think we've had a tendency in the past to do a lot of figurative pieces because they feel like there's kind of an inherent story in figurative work. And so this year we tried to mix things up a little bit to have some more pure landscapes. It's really fun to have Ingrid Ellison's work, which is just totally abstract and felt like a really open-ended invitation to find a story in those. It's kind of, I am not personally a poet, so it's sort of a fun project to think, if I were a poet, what would I find? Like we just talked about the one with the curtain pulled across. It feels like there's so many different ways to read into those things. And we try to pick things that have a kind of a wide range of reactions, whether it could be, like a really optimistic view or like a narrative story or just like a feeling that comes from it, or like visual cues. Like I love the poems that have visual elements where the poets use color and shape and like the things that they're seeing in the language. So we're trying to work with all those different ideas.
And do the artists specifically suggest work to you, say, I really want to see poems that get written to this or anything like that, Colin?
That's a great question. The artists, so we pick artists, there's certain artists who will ask to be in the show, like they just love it year after year. So we make sure that we include them, but we don't have them choose the work. Kirsten Serby, who manages the gallery with me, she and I go through and pick the work, pick the artists and the work that are in it. But we do know some artists just love, like Sal Taylor Kidd is a poet, and she is sort of a natural fit for this. And Ingrid Ellison is also a poet. And some of the work just feels like some of the artists, like this is one of their favorite times of year to get the poems about their work and read through them. And it's both stressful trying to figure out how to choose their piece, the one for the artist choice, but also just a joy to go through and see all the different ways people are reacting to their work.
That's great. And do you ever get something that nobody writes to? Has that
Good
ever
question.
happened in 5 years?
I don't think we've had an artist no one writes to, but there might be one piece. I'm in the gallery now, so I'm trying to look
Yeah.
around and see.
I don't think there was this year. I mean,
don't think
reading
there-
through them, everything got some response, but I'm trying to think through past years that maybe sometimes there are.
Yeah, there's sometimes pieces or artists who might have less than others. Like there tends to be one or two pieces each year that have a huge draw and they get more poems than anyone else. And it's kind of interesting to see who chooses that, whose work kind of inspires the most. And I also would just like to share, like each year we do this, I sort of feel like I get new things out of this experience. And one of the things that's been really fun this year, because we also have fifth grade students, which you saw some of, and we had high school kids in just this past Friday reading some of the poems they wrote for their class here at the gallery. And it's so interesting to see how people take these still images, because each of these paintings is just, one frozen moment in time. And then the poems that you guys write really add a sense of a longer time period into the image, like building in either the story before or after, or all the feelings that are happening around then. It feels like it really extends the experience of the work, of viewing the work in a really lovely way.
That's what great ekphrastic poetry has the ability to do, right?
Yeah.
That extend time. Yeah.
And it feels like what I love about the ekphrastic show is that both arts are informing each other. Like the poems might have nothing to do with the original intent of the artist, but it's making the experience of viewing it so much more rich to like see all these different ways into a piece of artwork that you hadn't seen before.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have a question in the chat, or a couple of them, asking about the poem about the raspberries, and could the poet talk about where it came from, and also how old. Oh, there's another one, but let's ask this one about the raspberries first. And I'm trying to remember which poem that was.
I think that's probably mine. I think it was the raspberry bushes in my poem, Meg.
Great. Could you talk a little bit about where that came from, Harriet?
Yeah. I love working with images, so it's always such a gift to have this ekphrastic challenge. And I facilitate a writing group, so we actually use the ekphrastic challenge as a prompt. And it's so interesting because it's like, I always think of an image as a portal. It sort of scratches something and then opens a door. And in this case, for me anyway, many times that's memories. And I think what was just said about a painting being a sort of a moment frozen in time, and we're allowed to dive into that. But then once we're in it, all sorts of other things happen. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the ekphrastic process, is that once you're in that moment, all kinds of other associations happen that perhaps you weren't expecting, and people appear that, you didn't invite in and they didn't ask to be there. And yeah, so for me, it starts with a very, very concrete memory.
Nice.
And then from there, I think it became about something else. That's the beauty of poetry. And then, of course, perhaps like other people in this call, you ask yourself, well, is that even a poem? Is that a story? What is that? But trusting the process of writing it, I think we discover something. And what was just said about the art influencing the writing and vice versa, I think is a really nice way of looking at it, because it becomes something other than just the memory as well. It becomes something completely new because our imagination has been involved in elaborating and doing something different with it.
Yeah, it is that wonderful combination, as you just said, between memory and imagination. And so many of the poems like draw on that. It's like, oh yeah, there's a little bit of experience there, but then there's the what if and the what might have been. That's great. Thank you, Harriet.
Thanks for the question.
Somebody did ask about the students. How old were they? They're both from 5th grade, and I think Sarah, the teacher, Sarah Sawitsky, for one of the 5th grade students is on.
Well, I'm 10. I'm 10. And I was one of those students.
Great. Thank you. That was Eleanor?
Yes.
And I think you know how old Javier is too, right?
I think he's 10 as well, yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's see. Someone's asking to hear from Brittany about something about your precision in your poetry. Is that something you might want to comment on?
Yeah, it's a really generous question. I think part of the resonance with Susan Lichtman's work, I'll echo the color, is what got me is there was so much precision in the way she had an open drawer, but there's also an open book, open flowers, open bowl, sort of open plan room. And so I just felt a presence who had lingered long about what they wanted to say. And I think that's where precision comes from. I was very interested in this piece because I love rooms in a house as a sort of metaphor for the psyche. And so the open drawer was this almost archetypal image of the unconscious and the things that go in there and sort of replicate without our wanting. So it was a lot of fun to think about sort of the universal junk drawer we have with batteries and rubber bands and things, but then to be that precise with emotions that might, or more abstract things that might also go in that drawer that's both tangible and real and psychological. I hope that helps.
Well, that was it's a great explanation, because if all it was describing what's in the drawer, it wouldn't be anywhere near as wonderful as the way you describe the more abstract things that might be in there, right? The emotional or yeah, thank you. Wow. Someone's asking about Sanna's poem and asking if Sanna would talk about what inspired you to write your poem.
Sure, thank you. I think I similarly was initially drawn to the colors in Susan's painting, and just immediately, I think, was sort of imagining myself into this scene in the room and felt like it really drew on a certain time of day and a certain kind of energy, particularly of women spending time together. And so I think that my initial draft just kind of put myself into that room. And there was something I couldn't quite get at. I was playing with sort of wonky verb tenses, either it would have been or it could have been, and I think eventually realized that like what it was really bringing up for me was a sense of loss of a certain kind of friendship I'd had at an earlier age and sort of hoped to have in the future, and that kind of created that the ultimate framing of lost friendships and imagining back into them. So that was.
Yeah, I think it was definitely your poem I was thinking of when I was thinking that it's not just memory, but it's imagining what might have been that you capture so beautifully in that poem.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for the question.
Let's see what else we have in our chat. If we have a question about what motivated the poets, and this is to any of you. What detail in the art pulled you in, or what particular aspect of that artwork motivated you to enter the piece with the poem?
I can respond to that.
Great.
I did write poems in response to 2 other pieces in the show, but this image clearly had the most heat for me. because of the curtain, the mystery of what's seen, what's visible, what's invisible, what we don't know or can't quite remember. Because part of that room is covered, the back of the room we only see part, so there's a lot of mystery in the image that it did take me back to this experience I had when I was young and my parents divorced, and I would spend nights in motels with my father, which does seem pretty weird now. So trying to continue to delve into that memory. I've written about it before, and I think in addition to the curtain, which immediately attracted me, I studied other details in the in the in the image. There was a print on the wall that I mentioned, maybe a sun or maybe a moon, like a ripe tomato, and then I think the hinge was looking at the lamp on the table and trying to decide what color it was and decided on hunter green, and then how to swivel from talking about the painting to entering my own experience. And so I had that table lamp carry it for me, um, saying the hunter green base, the shape of an hourglass holding time at bay in a motel room with my father. So that's where I was able to turn from the description to entering my own memory and experience of being in a room, not exactly like that, but um, a room that holds a lot of mystery.
What a beautiful description of that transition point for you that allows you to enter the memory. And also the way you enter the memory with the point of view of the child. Like the fact that the child felt special as a result of this was just, it was so poignant that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for capturing that.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else want to comment on a detail in the artwork that pulled you in or inspired you?
I will.
Yeah, great.
I was really pulled in by Ingrid's blueness of it. Was such a vibrant blue, and I know Ingrid, and I was just like, wow, I've never really just gotten pulled like that. And what I love maps, and so for me, as soon as I saw it as a map, and particularly as an island, then all of a sudden I went. I love hearing how everybody, not everybody, but most of us are pulled to a memory, a very specific memory. And for me, I had a job on Mount Desert Island when I was a kid, and I just got pulled to this one day working in Southwest Harbor, and it just it's one of the funnest things to allow a piece of artwork to drag you along and go for the ride and not stop yourself, just kind of let yourself be pulled into something. I feel very lucky when that happens, and that's what happened for me when I saw that painting as an island where I'd been.
It sounds very much like the tide pulling you in, right?
Yes, it was.
It's beautiful
Yeah.
description of that process and that process of discovery as a result. And, I think I see more and more ekphrastic writing these days. And I know it's always been its ancient form, but it's a wonderful prompt, if you will. Those of us who are poets who write from prompts, what the visual prompt is so evocative. And not always easy either. Anybody else want to comment on the detail that pulled you in, or? Okay. So I don't think I see any more questions for you guys in the chat. So I'm going to see, is Melissa or Austin on? I think Melissa was on. And if I could call on Melissa, who was one of our readers this time, who has also done a lot of ekphrastic writing, to talk to me a little bit about the process of reading these poems and selecting poem out of so many, or selecting some poems out of so many wonderful submissions.
I too am fascinated by the form of ekphrasis and the idea of being in conversation with another art as a way to spark our poetry. And so it was such an honor and joy to read all of these poems and I had a screen side by side with the poems that was the gallery online so that I could look at the art as I read. And it really just felt like being so engaged fully in the process and the way the paintings were moving the poets. So it was just really an honor. And also, as we've said, people have said during our time together today, the dance between the forms is so intricate and so interesting, and how the imagination is spurred. And I think it was just wonderful to see what happened, for example, when multiple people painted to the drawer, the open drawer. That was just so much fun. And it's just wonderful to see how the imagination takes flight and can hold both some aspect that is literal, but then turn or even leap to a more figurative aspect of what the painting inspires as well. Yeah, so it was really an honor and pleasure to read all of your work.
Well, thank you. It's a joy to have you reading them with me and with Austin. And, there was a comment we got from somebody that said that it's a selection, it's not a winner, because there are many wonderful ways to respond to artwork. And so we look for those poems that really spoke to us individually. And I think, as far as me reading, I look for something that tells me something more than what I'm seeing in the art, and takes me a place that perhaps I didn't expect to go. So it creates a broader, deeper conversation between poetry, memory, imagination, and the visual arts.
I think that point of the turn or the leap is often, as Wendy talked about the lamp doing that for her in her poem, that's that point too where we feel the surprise as a reader. We feel the discovery that I think the poet is making in conjunction with the painting, and it's so engaging.
That's great. Thank you. So I'm going to just ask if any of our poets have final comments that they'd like to make before we wrap up for tonight's reading. I know it's late in Spain, a bit earlier for a poet joining us from Washington, Sonya, but any other comments that you would like to add to our conversation before we close? Brittany, did you?
I just couldn't help but notice that there's something quite successful when someone leaves the painting and leaps into their own life. And I feel like a poem is also extremely successful if a reader leaves it and goes into their own storehouse of images too. So it was a fun little parallel of someone coming into and out of a room is very similar between poems and paintings.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I think that's so true. I was thinking of that Robert Hayden poem that I read in the beginning. And so, I certainly was alive for Selma and Saigon and the things, but I take a leap into what are the things that are troubling me today. And the painting is that consistency between it. And the ways that art whether it's poetry or the visual arts, can really change our experience. So yeah, I like that idea that the conversation started maybe with the art to the poet to the reader or the listener. Thank you.
And to build on that, I'll add that one of the things I love most about poetry is coming together in conversation with a community of writers. And this provided that extra dynamic of, you're making an immediate connection with a piece of art, and also the artist who you imagine is, the creator of that piece of art. So it starts already from this connection, and that's such a nice place to begin a piece of work. Feels less alone, and then coming together and hearing everyone and looking at the art again. It's really nice. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you to each of you for your wonderful poems, for your delightful readings tonight, and to all of our audience who came to listen. This is, as I said, one of my favorite events of the year, and I do look forward to the reading in the gallery on Saturday. I'm sorry that all of you can't be here in Camden, Maine for that part. But it's, we'll see if we can't share some of the poems themselves, not just the names of the poems on the website. I'll look into that and ask for permissions before we do that. But thank you all for coming. Thank you, poets, for reading, and have a wonderful evening, afternoon, wherever you are.
Thank you.